Okay, hi guys. So welcome to the PR3 sort of mini workshop in terms of things that we need to recap. So this was a concern that was raised in class. We had discussed it a few times. There were a couple of things that you felt that you were not comfortable with in terms of getting through the material. And the PRESA 7-step plan was one of them, right? Also in terms of a media release. So I've included some information regarding that. We'll talk about referencing and paraphrasing. So what I need to just say at the onset is I had a look at some of the material that was covered basically in terms of Public Relations 1, Public Relations 2, and what gets covered on Public Relations 3. Now, the very important thing, or the one thing that I did come across very clearly was that I think in PR1, if I can remember, under academic literacy, is academic literacy 1 and academic literacy 2 that is taught in first year. So with that, bearing that in mind, what I'm going to do is I am going to roughly talk you through. I'm not going to go in depth in terms of paraphrasing and the referencing, because one of the things on third year is you're supposed to have mastered that by now. So I gathered, and it was one of the discussions we had, is that, you know, there were change of lecturers last year at one point, and the lecturer had left, and Claire, the other lecturer, took over in terms of marking. And Claire did highlight in the feedback, and it's some of the feedback that you guys remember, is that the referencing was not done properly in terms of in-text referencing and the correct way of referencing. So with that being said, is that it's very important that when you get feedback from lecturers, that you download or screenshot or do something to get that feedback so that you can then refer to it. And by now, like in December, to have worked on it, or I'm not sure exactly when you got your feedback for your assessments, your summatives, to have had a look and try to improve on it if that was mentioned as part of PR2 feedback. So what I want to do is I want to take you through to this document that is on the screen. Firstly, it's the Harvard method of referencing. And it's when you say a beginner's guide, basically Boston has put this together like for students from PR1 right through to PR3 to be able to reference documents properly. So what I want to say is this document, as I mentioned in class yesterday, is available online on the whole campus. Under modules, if you go, you will see this document. It's 31 pages, and it gives you everything from referencing to Boston Media House's approach to referencing, academic integrity, visual sources, films, books, etc., 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 and the list goes on. What I am going to suggest to you is that you need, in order to master it, I'm going to take you through, right, as I did agree to when you asked me, is that I'm going to take you through very, very briefly over it. What you would need to do then is you would need to access this document, whether you download it onto your computer, and then look at how referencing is done. Now, they give you here, they say, in terms of referencing, it's a method used in the academic world to indicate where ideas, theories, quotes, facts, and any other evidence and information used in an assignment can be found. Now, the Harvard reference style of referencing is an author date method that cites each source within the body. So that means in-text referencing, And at the end, you will have a reference list. Now, there's a couple of points I am going to cover that is very critical when you are doing references, right? So in terms of the academic integrity, right, you need to ensure that all work is referenced. Then one of the other things we touched on yesterday was paraphrasing, because the work, the reflective assignments, and some of the presentations that you've presented in class has verbatim, that means exactly word for word from the textbook, and you've just put, for example, Bieneke et al., and you put the year, and that's it. So please remember, with the FA1 that's coming up, that's literally due in about a week's time or so, that you're going to have to do this very, very carefully, right? It talks about the Harvard referencing style, the purpose of it, all of that. I think go and just refresh your memory. Now, if you look here, a lot of you said that the lecture said in-text referencing was not needed, right? Now, then it's difficult to assess which part of the assignment is actually your own words and which part is thoughts and ideas that have been taken from the book. The two citation types that are used in the Harvard method of referencing is in-text citations and a reference list. The in-text citations, so in-text referencing, is located in the main body of the work and comprise only a portion of the full reference list. The full reference list will be at the end of the document. So I want to look at a quote here. Okay, so when we're looking at this piece of text here that's been written, okay, what you will see is that not all the authors are, not the full reference, or like the author's initials and surnames are added. So it's the surnames, right? Then it's the year the book was published in terms of the edition. Then you would put 2 dots and you would put 68. 68, now this is in text. So as you're going through your assignment, you're going to add this in, and you're going to give an indication of which page in the textbook did you access it from. So very important is, if you're going to use, for example, strategic communication, right? Where you are going to say Bieneke et al. So just say this was a text that you typed here. Volunteer programs are successful when volunteers are working in positions they are looking forward to undertaking and want to fulfill. Just say, okay, this is taken from a textbook, but just say this, you've written this, right? But it's a thought that you've taken from strategic communications. You would put in brackets, Bieneke et al, full stop, comma, right? You would put the year, right? 2 dots, and you would say maybe page 100. Now, there's other ways of doing it, right? You can do, if it's one specific page that you've taken the reference out, you can just put the P, a small letter P, and then 68, right? If it's pages, you would put PP and then dot 68 to 69. Let me repeat that. After the year, right, you can put 2 dots, right? Then you can put the word P, a small p, before 68. So it will be P dot 68. That means it's one page that it has been accessed from. But if it is 2 pages, you would put a double P, small p dot 68 to 69 or 70. Okay, so I hope that clears it up. I'm looking for the referencing for the actual So you will also see that paraphrasing is covered on page 10, right? But we'll get to that just now. Now, each one here, you will see that they will give to you, for example, let's use, I'm just looking for, an online one, right? Okay. Don't think it's going to allow me. So I'm just going to have to copy this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly stop sharing. Then I want to share. Okay, so here, right, I'm just going to put this in here so I can just see what I'm doing. For example, okay, so I'm going to do this. Trying to just see how I can do this. Let's stop sharing. Let us go to a website. Okay. Let me share the screen with you. Just say, for example, where is this now? Okay. So you can see here on this tab, right? It's a website, right? The website is called TSW Training. It has a heading. It says a complete guide to authentic leadership. Now, in the case where you don't have an author, here it tells you Matthew Channel is the author. This is the date that he's wrote it. So in the absence of an author, you will use TSW Training. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to just copy this very quickly, and I'm going to then take you to my slide, and then you can see what I'm doing. This is interesting. It's like flipping from one screen to the next. Right. Okay, I'm actually doing that wrong. TSW Training. TSW Training. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do the Harvard referencing, right? In terms of the way it's done in your reference, your Harvard reference. So in the case where we do not have an author, right? And it just has a date and it has the heading here, right? What we would do is we would use the website. Just say, for example, Matthew Channel's name was not there, right? I'm just going to put it in yellow. Just say his name was not there. What we're going to do is we're going to literally put TSW Training, because that is the name of the company, full stop. Then we can put it in brackets. So we have, in fact, the year and the date, right? So we can say 7 December 2021, right? This is the date it was written. And then what is the name of the article? It's a complete guide to authentic leadership, right? Full stop, right? And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to say retrieved from, and you're going to put the website link in here, right? And then what you also need to do, which is very important, you need to open a square bracket and you need to say accessed. Today is 31 March 2023. Full stop. And what you need to make sure that you do is the heading of the article or the book is always italicized. And there you have it. Now, just say you were doing an in-text referencing, strategic or a public relations practitioner needs the elements of or needs various aspects of authentic leadership. For example, empathy and self-awareness when leading teams, right? And then I would put in brackets TSW training, and I would put comma, and all I do is I put the year and close bracket. Now, what happens in the case where we actually have an author, right? What we do is we put the author's surname, right, comma, M, full stop. So we're going to put, we always use the author's name and then his initial, and we would put the date. The topic or the book heading is always in italics. Retrieved from, that's the website and that's when it's accessed. So when I'm doing my in-text reference, I will say Chanel, comma 2021, close bracket. I don't need to put a page number. Just say this was a book, for example, right? I would then say page 28, close bracket. If it was 2 pages, I would say PP 28 to 35, right? So in terms of, and if you look here, okay, the way I've done it is exactly how it is in your notes for the Harvard referencing. Now, remember yesterday I showed you in terms of the textbook, right? So one of the documents that we had was, I just need to find it. Let's need to find the document and then I can open. Where did I put it? In week 6, probably. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah, the stop sharing is like really multitasking, eh? I tell you, it is something else. Now, here's a very quick and easy way of learning how to, this here, your subject outline, you said it was not on Cole Campus. It is actually there. Please make sure that when you register for a subject or for a year, you go through all the tabs that you have access to and you have a look at the information, because you said this document was not on Cole Campus. Now, it's year 1, 2, and 3. it gives you a summary. So if you go to level 3, this is a summary of the year that's going to unfold. Now, when you look here, you can see the book textbooks, how they are referenced. Now, even this Bianca one, right? When you look at it for strategic communications, let's go to strategic communications rather. Here, for public relations 3, right? Or even let's take public relations 2. The Skinner, right? And you put the authors in the order that they're shown in the book. So if you look at your handbook that has the bees with the hive on it, you'll see it's Chris Skinner, Gary Mershon, Darlene Renee Bianca. So it will be Skinner, comma, C, full stop, comma, Mershon, right, comma, G, full stop, and Bianca, comma, and you would normally put D dot R because it's Darlene Renee. She has 2 names there, first name she's got. Then when you look inside the textbook, generally on your, it's after the heading and all of that, right? You would look there and see, although the book was first published in 1982, this is the 11th edition. So if you look on the cover, it says 11th edition. Now the 11th edition was published in 2016. Hence you would put 2016. You can either put it that or you can put it in brackets. Then you put the title of the book in full, Handbook of Public Relations, and you mention 11th edition, right? The key thing to remember is when you look on the cover, right? You may have the name of the publisher, but we don't put the name. This book was published in South Africa by the Oxford University Press, Southern Africa. So it's the Oxford University Press. So we'd say which country? We would say South Africa, 2 dots, and Oxford University Press. Okay. So go and access this document, right? And there you already have the references for all 3 textbooks given to you, which you don't even have to recreate. You can use them as that. But what you can do is just remember for Renee Bianca that her initials are D.R, right? Because she has 2 names. But go and look at this document online, right? And use it in order to get your referencing spot on. So that is referencing done, right? I don't think I'm going to cover any more on it. Now, when we get through to, I'm going to be so dizzy after this from jumping from one screen to the other. Guys, you must forgive me. It's been a very, very long day. So, you know, we had the issues with the electricity today, and the electricity has only come on this afternoon, hence you are not joining me on this. And tomorrow morning I have class, which I'm unable to, well, class for me, so I'm unable to do this tomorrow. The electricity only came on a short while ago, and that's when I started recording. So, paraphrasing, right? Now, this is also in your Harvard Beginner's Guide. Paraphrasing is rewriting using your own words. To paraphrase is to read someone's information and rewrite it using your own words and phrasing. Paraphrasing rather than quoting the information source is the preferred way of constructing an assignment. What it tells us is that you understand the theory that you are rewriting. When possible, include the page numbers or page number in the in-text reference. Always make sure you include the page number, because we need to refer to that, and we are not lazy. We just don't read the assessments and we look past these references. believe you me, we're going to check on page 68 if that is constructed, or the information or the idea or thought is extracted from there. If you paraphrase your source by rewriting the information using your own words and phrasing, the sentence and the in-text reference should look like this. So if you look at what was written here, volunteer programs are successful when volunteers are working in positions they look forward to undertaking and want to fill. In your own words, if social welfare volunteers are hired in positions that they want to, then the social welfare programs will function well. That is paraphrasing, guys. So if you refer on page 10 and 11 of the Harvard Referencing Guide, so look at it again, is you've got volunteer programs are successful when volunteers are working in positions they look forward to undertaking and want to fill. When you paraphrase it and you've rewritten, it says if social welfare volunteers are hired in positions that they want to, then the social welfare programs will function well, and you have your reference in brackets. So page 10, right? I was going to look for an example, but actually when I went through this document, I saw it already had an example here. So page 10 and page 11. Guys, you're going to have to do some work on your own in terms of going through, and even if you go to Google, right, you need to go through and have a look at different sources on the website, how things are written, rewritten, etc. So what I have done is I have included those something small at the end on paraphrasing, right? So paraphrasing means rewriting the same information in a different way. It helps you to better integrate the ideas into the particular piece you are writing. Decide what is the key information for the purposes of your discussion. Change the order of the ideas and the words, but don't just interchange words and ideas so that it looks different, but it's exactly the same words in a different order, right? Change the word format, grammatical form if necessary. Use synonyms, but do not change any specific terminology. So in the example below, terms such as plagiarism management, university students, distance were not changed. The best place to find suitable synonyms is elsewhere in the same articles. If some words stay the same in the same order, so if you are using, right, if you're paraphrasing and you need to use 5 words from the textbook that is in a consecutive order, that means they follow one after the other. So if you have 3 or more consecutive words, you need to use quotation marks around these words, emphasizing that that is a direct quote from the textbook, and then you would use your in-text reference and include which page number this is from. Repeat the author's name or pronoun throughout the paraphrase, so it's clear that we are still reading a paraphrase, right? So that is your in-text referencing, right? Add detail where the information came from history. You should actually, it's not if necessary, actually, you've got to include details about where the information came from. So I'm just looking here. Keep the author's name and page number. You have been told, may have been told, you do not need to keep a page number for a paraphrase, but you need to do that. It is not negotiable. Okay. So it's not negotiable in terms of indicating who the author is, the year, and the page number where it came from. So try your best to paraphrase, because what is going to happen is if you constantly take chunks from the textbook and you apply it into your assignment, and there's quotation marks throughout, we're going to know that those words were taken from the textbook word for word. And even though you've put a page number, you haven't really paraphrased, right? Now, the two things that I've covered is referencing. Second thing I have covered is paraphrasing. Please go and access those two documents that I've referred to that you said were not on Cole Campus, which I did find and indicate to you the areas on Cole Campus it was available. So one was the syllabus that gives you the referencing already done for all three textbooks. So that is easy already. Then you need to look at the document. It's the Harvard referencing document. It's on 31 pages. It shows you paraphrasing. It gives you one example on page 10, and on page 11, it gives you a paraphrased example. Page numbers in your in-text references are absolute necessary. Now, the other two things that we need to cover is the PRISA 7-step plan, the structure of just the elements of the media release, and the do's and don'ts. The format in terms of where the date goes, where the end goes, where your name is supposed to be, in terms of the actual structure, you should be well aware of that. If you are struggling, right, you need to have a look at your public relations too when you did media releases. Now, if it's the body of it that you're struggling with, then that I'll definitely cover in here. So what we're going to start with is basically public relations, the PRISA 7-step plan. The elements in terms of what we need to cover, right? There are some areas I'm not going to go into extensive detail because it's been done already. So the PRISA 7-step plan, based on your feedback that you got in your summative at the end of 2022, when you completed PR2, when feedback is given, the most important thing is to write it down, screenshot it, or do whatever you need to, right? And then to improve on it. Now, the one thing that I do remember is that you guys said that in-text referencing, you were told that it was not necessary. We've cleared that now. You need to use in-text referencing, and you also need to include the page number in your in-text references. Your full list of references will be at the end. Your PRISA 7-step plan, right? So just like any PR campaign, we put plans together for a specific event or activity. The 7-step plan then needs to evolve or change to suit the particular campaign or program you're working on. An event can be a charity day, a launch event, cocktail party, even a board meeting, a team day away, or a factory tour for the media. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you have a plan and you follow the PRISA 7-step plan for that specific event or campaign. And remember, you're going to need to put together the PRISA 7-step plan for a charity event, or this was actually from last year. It's actually a PR2 one that I took information from. So, step 1, what are we going to be doing? Okay, we are going to be doing a situational analysis. Now, please remember the formative 1 assessment that you're going to be doing, right? You need to ensure that your work or your document, once it is finished, you need to critique it and look whether it is presented in a professional format, right? Can you say this is done with absolute pride and that you are proud of this work? That is what we're expecting from level 3 or public relations 3. We're going to push your boundaries because at this level, you need to be able to have mastered a a media release. Your media analysis. Now remember, a situational analysis could be for an event you're having. It could be a crisis. It could be a challenge. It could be anything for that matter. It's not only something that is positive like an event or a charity event or partnership, a sponsorship. It could be for a challenge the company is facing. So what you need to do is you need to go and research on the company. So when you're in the working environment and you're employed by a company, just say Nedbank employs you. You need to be able to understand the background and all of the information that is tied to the strategy of the organization. What their mission is, what their vision is, what their values are. Some companies may have a mission and a vision. Some companies may only have one or the other, a mission or a vision. Company values. What is the strategic objectives of the company? Things like that you're going to have to research. Now, you need to unpack in terms of what is the company all about, firstly. You need to indicate why is this event taking place? What is the purpose of it? Why does your organization support this specific event, charity, sponsorship? What is the situation of any of the event sponsors? So in terms of your event, who the sponsors are, can you tell us a little bit about the sponsors? Some of the background, explain who they are, where they operate, what industry they're in, what are their needs, what is their current social media stats, things like that. You really need to put analytics as well. So remember, and this I explained very clearly, is when you're doing and you're monitoring an evaluation, you need to look at your objectives to see if you've met them. And you're going to provide analytics, especially when you talk about social media, right? Or the number of people that attended the event, etc. You cannot merely just say the event was successful. You need to unpack that and advise how and give further information. Then you need to understand if this is a corporate social responsibility event or is it in line with the global strategy of the organization. So remember, there are companies that have a South African footprint, and then you have companies that have a global footprint. That means they have offices or manufacturing facilities across the globe, right? If that is applicable, then you would add that to the assignment. Now, don't use this as the template of what needs to go in. You need to be creative. You need to think strategically, right? You need to talk about the company. You need to talk about the event. You need to talk a little bit about the history of the event. Why is the event happening, right? What has been the previous attendance for this event? Who attends this event, right? So in this case, it may, for your formative assessment, it may not be that it's a corporate social responsibility event. That's why I'm saying don't take this as a copy and paste in terms of a template and answer the questions exactly how it is. These are simply examples of questions that we are giving you, right? That you need to answer when you're doing your situational analysis. How does this event align with the values, vision, mission of your organization? So if you're a PR agency, right, and now you've been tasked to do this event, does it align with your values? Is it a good event? Do you want to be aligned to it in terms of what the company actually stands for, right? So situational analysis is fairly straightforward, right? Try and make it as comprehensive as possible. And what is ideal for you to do is to look at the rubric. The amount of marks that's going to be allocated, it's in your briefing document, and I'm not going to review it. Excuse me. I'm not going to go through because it has been covered extensively. You need to look at the rubric and you need to no, so these questions as guideline as to how you're going to compile it, but there's other questions that you need to ask that is not on this slide. Right, once we've moved past the situational analysis, then we go through to objectives. Now, even with objectives, you learned a certain way, you said qualitative and quantitative, etc., etc. So the way I've taught you is the way you're going to put it in your FA1, because I will be marking it and this is what I want to see. So first and foremost, so you've done your situational analysis. Now you're going to go to your objectives. Remember, you can have one specific goal, right? Or you can have just your objectives. You choose. You can have one goal and you can have a number of objectives aligned to it, right? So understanding public relations objectives and evaluation criteria. A public relation campaign has to have goals in place before you start. It is a planned process with strong objectives set ahead of time. Now, ideally, what I think for practicing and to become more familiar with this, you need to have, for example, one goal, and then you need to have maybe 4 objectives or 3 objectives to it. You don't need to have 10 goals. You can even have 2 goals, and each goal you need to have probably about 4 objectives maybe, or 3 objectives, depending on what you're trying to achieve, right? When planning, we look at how we evaluate our success of the campaign. Your objectives are going to be used at the end to identify whether you have achieved the objectives and the goals of the plan, right? Objectives and evaluation criteria are specific to your public relations campaign. They need to cover things you are doing in your campaign. Now, still on step 2, this is a word you've seen in class, and I remember very clearly when we were in, I think, D6, that one day I used a whiteboard and I unpacked this for you in detail. So literally, I took you step by step by step in terms of when you're writing objectives, they need to be SMART. They need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be achievable, they need to be realistic, and they need to have a time frame. If it does not have this element, it is not complete, right? So when you're writing your objectives for the requirements of FA1, you will need to write SMART objectives. So when you look at the textbook, right, and your PRISA 7-step plan is part of chapter 11. When we look up regarding objectives, right, we do not say you need to do qualitative and quantitative objectives. When it says here what you do, the public relations practitioner want to achieve both quantitatively and quantitatively, or qualitatively rather, is it's essential. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to do qualitative and quantitative objectives. What we need to make sure is that every single objective that you write needs to be SMART. Now, you need to identify first and foremost, it's not on here, but what your goal is going to be. If for FA1, right, for the Galaxy KD 94.5 KFM event, right, there may be only one goal, and then you may have several objectives. That is also fine. What I want to see in this coming through is it being tied. So you have done the situational analysis, right? Your objectives then need to ensure that they are tied in with a SMART format. So SMART objectives is is one that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and is time-bound. SMART objectives provide the details of how a group or organization will achieve a goal. Specific objectives are precise, they are clear to the rest of the team, they use plain language, they use verbs, right? Now, the way I taught you to write it is to reduce the percentage of Tubman country students in grade 6 through to 12 who've smoked cigarette in the past 30 days. Right? And what you can do is you can say commencing from 1 April 2023. So you need to come up with a goal. Remember what I said about is a goal is broad, is right, to reduce the percentage of students at the Tubman county, right? To reduce the percentage of students smoking at the Tubman County. Can be a goal. Your how is your objectives. To reduce the percentage of Tubman County students in grade 6 through to 12 who have smoked cigarettes in the past 30 days, commencing from 1 April. Then I spoke to you about measurable objectives. To decrease by 5 percentage points the number of Tubman County students in grade 6 through to 12 who have smoked cigarettes in the past 30 days, and you would have from your data, you would have the current number, right? The baseline, that means the current rate is 18%. What this measurable objective wants to do is reduce by 5 percentage points, right, within the past 30 days. And that means that you can add that it was at 18% in there, or you can do it similar to how it's done here. Right? Then we have achievable or attainable objectives should be within reach for your partners, community, or team, and consider available resources, knowledge, and time. Remember, considering what's achievable for your team or organization requires thought and discussion, So, for example, to increase, right, the percent of establishments that pass tobacco compliance checks from 75 to 80% by December. You can actually just put it in a proper format by 31 December. You can just put 2023. Okay, and you can put where you've sourced your data from, and you can put it in brackets. Then, in terms of realistic objectives align with the corresponding goal, right? And with an organization or group's mission, vision, values. They're important to partners, community members, decision makers, and they help achieve meaningful change for focus populations, meaning that your objective needs to be realistic. If we are trying to completely eradicate, right, all of the students who are smoking cigarettes between grade 6 and 12 within 1 month, is that realistic? No. And then it must be time-bound. So time-bound objectives attach a reasonable date by which objectives will happen. Okay, so the SMART objectives, that day when we were in D6, I took you thoroughly through them in detail. So that should not necessarily be a problem. You can have qualitative and quantitative objectives, but they do not need to be split, right? You don't need to have them split. You basically need to have them written in a smart format. So you either have one goal for objectives, you have another goal, and you have another 3 objectives. The number of objectives per goal does not matter. And you do not necessarily need to have 5 goals. You can only have 2 goals, and they can tie in your objectives to each of those goals. Step 3 is your stakeholders, right? Now, with stakeholders, it's understanding and explaining your customer or target market demographic. It is extremely important, right? Now, this makes mention of the PR2 portfolio. So remember in PR2, you were taught the a PRISA 7-step plan, right? You are going to have to be able to do a stakeholder mapping where you are able to identify all of the relevant people who has an influence and who will be influenced by the specific event, right? So when we look at when we say that you need to take into consideration your stakeholder and look at the demographics of each stakeholder, we need you to look at age, race, income group. So age, who is going to be your target audience? Is it people aged 20 to 50? Are kids allowed at this event? Are kids not allowed? It's a music event. Does it have access to ramps so that people who are on wheelchairs are able to access the premises, right? Is it suitable for older people, the older generations, right? So you need to identify that, right? In terms of race, is there a specific race that you are targeting, right? Or is that you have forgotten a specific race? You need to take that into consideration. Now, remember I mentioned in class that when we look at income groups, right? We don't say lower income, middle income, or higher income anymore. The term that has evolved and is used is living standards of measure. So living standards measure, it's short for LSM, and you have from LSM 1 to 10, 10 being the very affluent, right, who are the high net worth or high net worth individuals or organizations, but not organizations because we're doing demographics. So it would be high net worth individuals, those that are very affluent and wealthy, etc. And then when you move down, when it decreases the numbers, it goes through to people who are sort of middle class, earn a middle class, um, they fall into middle class, but we don't mention that there are people who just live comfortably and cannot afford like a lot of luxuries, and then those are like your LSM 1 or 2 or 3 who are very poor, the poverty-stricken people. So that is what we do, is we group them to put together this plan for and the strategy according to attended, and taking into consideration also things like your unemployment levels, etc. Also, between females, right? Remember that would Okay, we are back. Sorry, guys. Apologies for that. So the people who you're going to be who are going to be attending this festival, this music festival, what kind of people are they? Are they adventurous? They music lovers? They what are they? You know. Also look at family orientated people. So in terms of the event, the age group, what about families who have kids and kids that are not able to attend this event, etc. Geographic, there's a typo here. Sorry, this was not me, it was copy and paste, but I should have checked. Geographic, so where are your customers based from? A music festival that happens in Cape Town, sometimes you find people going all the way from Johannesburg, Cape Town, to attend a specific artist that's coming to perform. And remember, with COVID, of this, right? This event that you are doing your research on, or you're putting your strategy and your plan together, is taking place after this event could not take place because of the pandemic, right? Also bear in mind that what happened during the pandemic is that there were a lot of people that were retrenched, lost jobs, and it's now moved to one income household, right? In some cases, both income earners lost their jobs. So be mindful of that fact when you're doing your research in terms of exactly who your stakeholders are and who you're going to, right? Who is going to get the information. Remember now, these are also just guidelines. Do not copy and paste it into your, if one. Sorry, guys, we are getting there, but you'll need to bear with me with the Wi-Fi because of the electricity. It's because of the weather. We've got really bad weather, so apologies. So you need to identify who are your stakeholders. Your message, right? I'm not going to go too much into message because it speaks to your editorial angles, right? You need to look and ask yourself a couple of questions. What is the event all about? As part of your messages, this could be the theme of your event, a night with the stars, or the reason you are having it, raising funds for those in need. Think what your press release would say about the event. What would your guests take home in terms of their understanding of why you had the event? One or two critical angles about the event, partnership, sponsorship. So one of the things you would do is you would talk about their sponsors for the event. You need to make mention of that. That's just a tip. Make mention of the sponsors because they are very important, right? Now, when you look at your editorial angles, right, the coverage, which expression or opinion about something that is not paid for. So remember when you're doing the event, remember all of the channels or platforms that you are making use of is not going to be paid for. It requires finding interesting angles, pitching it to the relevant journalist, and with the aim of it getting published. Editorial angles can be about many things, not just about charity work, and that's just an example. You need to do extensive research on your organizations, its stakeholders, and the media choices you have had before you can put editorial angles together. Also look at the company's website, some of the press releases that they've put out before. Have a look at that. Please don't copy and paste. I'm just saying have a look at what they've done before. Look at their social media pages. Go and Google the company. Do your research, guys. Remember research. Now, editorial angles, it is a specific hook or the point of theme of your PR story. Now, if you look at examples, WebMD launches COVID-19 symptom tracker. That is a message or a hook or an editorial angle. Now, WebMD has created an online tool that allows consumers to check if they have COVID-19 virus based on their profiles and stated symptoms. So your headline would read that WebMD launches your COVID-19 symptom tracker, and then you would unpack that in 2 or 3 lines. And then your theme of your press release would be around this, right? An editorial angle is the news event, the controlling issue or topic, and the reason the news editor or producer will want to publish, broadcast your story. Right. A good editorial angle is guided by the characteristics of a newsworthy story. Now, remember the Public Relations 1 content where newsworthiness was discussed. Please go back and have a look at Public Relations 1. I'm sure you have your material and your textbook. Newsworthy stories are news stories that are worthy of being included in a newspaper magazine. It is interesting and relevant to the audience, reading, listening, or watching it. Now, there's a funny headline here, or a scenario. If a dog bites a man, it's not news. But if a man bites a dog, it is. Interesting, relevant, people want to know what's happening. So what makes a good editorial angle? If your PR story has one or more of the 8 characteristics of a newsworthy story, it is more likely to be appealing to the media. Now, if you look here on the Sun, if you look, I just want to increase this. The Daily Sun always has interesting information, guys. Zombies want me dead, right? Then if you look at the Financial Times, Hewlett Packard to acquire autonomy for £6 billion, right? Interesting, newsworthy. Now go back to PR1 and look at what those 8 characteristics are, please. And you can actually look at that. So to make it easier, here are some characteristics of a newsworthy story, the factors that create a newsworthy story. So it's conflict, prominence, timeliness, proximity. Israel fires at Syria for 2nd straight day. That's the war in the Middle East. Twitter mocks all the bad grammar and typos in Bonang's book. That was The Citizen. WebMD launches COVID-19 symptom checker. We've covered that, right? So when AKA was, he was killed, right? That was, it made headlines. And you will follow the headlines now about, now people want to know who killed him. So there's constant updates which people are reading and access because they're interested in this news story. It's got relevance. People want to know what happened to AKA. He was a well-loved, figure, a prominent figure in South Africa, right? So once you've done your research and now you can look at ways of getting coverage in the media, remember we are looking for positive coverage and stories. Go back to PR1 and remember the things that discussed making a story newsworthy. You need to actually backtrack and do a little bit of homework in terms of this. I did not want to get everything, put everything down and really just spoon feed you. You need to actually do some of the work. When you come up with an idea, you have to consider if it is really newsworthy, interesting. Would you read or listen to or watch something like this? These slides are some of the many things we look at and research to come up with interesting angles or ideas. You also have to follow current news to see if your company is doing anything or part of issues that are newsworthy in the current news cycle. For those of you who were following the news this week, right? I'm not sure you're listening to this now, Mbali Nipo. The interest rate went up by 50 basis points yesterday. How does that affect our economy? How does that affect people who need to run households, right? Donald Trump went to court this week, right? What happened with that? So I constantly say, go and read the news, go and look at this community. If you don't want to constantly go on these platforms, you can subscribe. And that information will come to you directly into your inbox. And your activity coming through in your formative assessments. We don't want to see just a copy and paste of the theoretical things that we're covering. Your plan of action, right? Or this is your activities. You need to decide when are you going to have your plan completed for the preparation of your event. Remember, with journalists, please be mindful of this. You cannot invite them a week or even 2 weeks before an event, or even 3 weeks. You need to at least invite them a month and a half before the event takes place, because their diaries fill up very quickly and they get invited to different things. So you need to ensure that the timing of your plan is really critical in terms of how you're doing it, right? Also include an order of events for the actual day, from setting up to guests arriving, to what happens on the day, to wrapping up of the event. This is not for guests, guys. This is for you and your project team, right? Step by step on the day, how the event is going to unfold from the time, right, that you arrive at the venue. The music systems are not even set up. What is the plan of action? What happens if the music systems that has been sourced through a service provider, the company was supposed to be on site by, say, 11 o'clock. It is now 12 o'clock and they have not arrived. What do you do, right? So it should include everything that happens from booking the catering, to the venue, to the speakers, securing the sponsors, sound hire, food, when invitations go out, RSV, paying deposits, etc. If this is relevant for FA1, it needs to be included. If not, then this is just FYI for your information. Your activities, I am not going to go further into it. So these examples of PR activities, and guys, these are just examples, right? There are more activities than this. It's press releases, media interviews, or radio interviews, or TV interviews, setting up of newspapers with setting up of interviews with journalists for newspapers, magazines, or websites, or editors of magazines, posting interviews that have taken place immediately on social media or websites, social media campaigns, right? Press conferences, launch events, handing out of flyers, hosting of media in a VIP area so they can interview the talent, right? Write articles and post on social media, competitions. Now, sometimes competitions, if you negotiate a specific angle with a radio, just say, for example, on radio, you may be able to, especially on the community radio stations, be able to secure a slot without paying for it. This is not in all cases, guys. It's in very few cases that this actually happens. Budget, I'm not covering budget because there is an example in your textbook, right? Um, so the budget example in your textbook. So what you need to do is make sure you have an item of every single thing that is got a cost attached to it. Even refreshments for the team on the day when they're setting up is a cost item, right? So in the book, in the textbook, you will find an example under budgeting, page 110, 111, and 112 will give you examples. And what you can do is you need to package them in in terms of their section. So for example, if you're going to have a media VIP section that's going to cost you X amount, you need to put it in there, right? The booking of that area, right? Or setup of that area, refreshments for the VIPs, etc. So look at it and see how it is segmented, right? And then you need to do that, right? What you need to do is you never do a cut and paste. Don't do that for your FA1. Always keep in mind that your contingency needs to be put in place. So for the purposes of this, you don't actually need to put a figure. What you need to do stipulate is to say you have a 20% contingency in at the bottom, right at the bottom of your budget. You have a 20% contingency in. So should something go wrong and or sometimes you can go 50%, depending on how much of risks you've identified. So if the caterers don't pitch up on the day, or the people who have arranged the sound don't pitch up on the day, what is plan B? So you can be as generous or you can be as frugal when you're looking at your contingency amount, but that goes right at the bottom of your budget. Please don't forget that. That is key to add in. So your evaluation, now your event is done and dusted, right? What you need to do is you need to evaluate the success of your event once it's completed. Remember, with public relations, we have to show return of investment. It's not going to be necessarily through sales, right? It's going to be through different metrics. So you can also measure that previously you got this amount of attendance and now it's X amount or whatever the case may be. But remember, you need to look at all the coverage that was published in the media, right? If you had specific speakers on stage, right? What was the response? And also if you had influencers at the event or brand ambassadors at the event, what was the impact of that? You know, Facebook, Twitter, whatever platform that you've used as part of your strategy, you need to assess. Now, in terms of your Facebook, right, if you have gone and put up, say, 20 posts on the day of the event, right, and if you got, say, 1 million likes or something, right, or comments on it or whatever, you need to package that into a way that says how you evaluate that this event was a success. Now, I can't give you away too much. You need to think creatively. Creativity. I can't even speak, guys. Creatively as possible. There, I got it right on take 3. So if you are doing an event and you need to put together an invitation, I'm not going to cover this because this was covered in your PR2. In terms of the press release, right? Writing the perfect press release and in terms of your media release. Now, in terms of the actual format, where the date goes, the heading goes, all of that you should be well aware of, and you should have sort of a structure. It's more putting in the date, right? It's addressing it. You need to put the heading, right? You need to put the date of the media release. You've got to put the actual body of the information in, and you've got to end it in terms of if it's a public relations agency, you need to indicate that that is the media contact or who's the media contact. And you can include information like about the company below that or a link to their website, right? So writing a perfect press release is also known as media motivation. It's a piece of information given to the media for direct use in the media or to entice a journalist to want to know more. An introduction to a particular story or angle, remember editorial angle, and a background document. So if the journalist doesn't know much about, say, the event that you're planning, you would give them a separate document that would give them information about the company, etc., etc. But you need to decide what you need to do for your assessment. Then there's a couple of rules that should not be broken when you're writing the perfect press release. Remember, it needs to be neutral. You cannot influence it by your biases, if you have any. It needs to be factual. It needs to be opinion free. And it needs to be written in the third person. I think you've heard third person many times throughout your lectures, especially in your second year and in your third year when we say writing in the third person, right? So in terms of the factual part of it, journalists are interested in facts, not opinion. A company's opinion of itself is naturally going to be shed a positive light on a story. A company would be biased towards themselves or an industry. You cannot expect a journalist to check your facts. If a press release is coming from you, it is assumed by the journalist that everything in this media release is factual. No referencing. So press release, you don't use in-text references. You don't use references at the end. That's why your contact details are at the end, right? And it's your job as a public relations practitioner to make sure that you conduct the necessary research and obtain facts. So fact checking is of utmost importance. So why do we write in third person, and what is this third person in media release? In order to be neutral and factual, we need to come across and write in a way that a journalist would write. If we say we or our company, then it's no longer neutral. If it comes from you, it has an opinion or is subjective. We say the organization, right? The company, the artist, right? The service provider, or what we would do instead of saying the organization, we would say the company's name, for example, Samsung Galaxy or Samsung, right? Is this and this and this. Or we would say, we would refer, we would actually call the company by the company's name. We say employees, festival goers, music lovers. If a journalist gets a media release written in the first person and then they have to change it, please bear in mind that journalists do not have the time to change your writing for you to get it into third person. They may just ignore your press release and find another story that's written in the third person. So remember, when you're writing a press release, there are the 5 W's and the H. So it's who, what, where, when, how, and why. So if you leave any of these 3 elements out, a journalist needs to come back to you to find out information. They honestly don't have the time, and they may just let the story fall through by the wayside and not even consider it. Also, do not assume that the reader knows everything about the situation, the event that's taking place, etc. You need to provide the answers, and you need to get it done in the first 2 or 3 paragraphs before you lose the reader's attention. I would say even the first 2 paragraphs. If you can capture it in 2 paragraphs, because when you read yourself, think about yourself. When you're reading something, you normally read the headline, you start reading the first paragraph. If it's intriguing enough, you continue, and you continue to the second and third paragraph. If by the first or second line it's lost you, you're going to go back and you're going to exit the article. You're not going to read any further. So when writing a media release, you need to ask yourself, and once again, this is not prescriptive in terms of what needs to go into your FA1 when asking the questions. It's examples. What happened? When did it happen? To whom did it happen? Why did it happen? Why is it important? Right? What were the costs involved? Who was involved? Where did it take place? What was the final outcome? Right? How does it work? What facts are supporting this? If you are quoting anybody in your media release, who is it that you want to quote? Right? The headline is extremely important. Guys, I've been caught many times with this. I look at an article and I see a headline that is so intriguing to me, only to find out when I click it is something totally irrelevant in the article. There and then I exit because it's lost my attention. I was only interested because I read the headline and I thought, oh, I want to read this. And this attention of the reader, it entices the reader to want to know more, exactly my situation. It tells a tiny bit of the story without giving too much away. So it can be clever, right? If the topic allows for it, so you can come up with a brilliant headline that is so catchy that any person will want to read it. However, similar to my scenario where it detracted from the initial story, it shouldn't detract from the essence of the story. It must be relevant to the story, and it must not be a lie or seen as a clickbait. I've been caught in clickbait many times where I click. It's baited me. And when I read the story, I think, oh, let me leave now. So remember, if a press release is not perfect, then it's not usable. It's unusable. If you don't get 100% for a press release, then it's a fail, guys. On year 3, right, a 70% mark for a press release is a fail because 30% of the information or what is supposed to have been included was not included. You may have been able to put together the perfect press release before you submit it to your boss or client for review and sign off. It's not up to them to check for spelling, grammar, or fact check. That's your job. Now remember, when we're going to be marking your press releases or media releases in your FA1, if there are spelling mistakes, if there are grammar, you're going to get marked down. And if you don't get 100% for your press release, remember at the end of this year, when you do enter, if you decide to enter into the working environment immediately and then continue your studies part-time, additional studies, you're going to have to realize the workplace is very different. This is a learning environment where you do make mistakes and we help you along the way. But remember, your press release needs to be 100% perfect. Okay, and that's it. We are done. Guys, so what we have done today is I first covered the Harvard referencing. The document is available on Cole Campus, 31 pages. Please download it. I've given you examples of how the Harvard referencing is done, the expectation. There's the syllabus document, which is also available on Cole Campus, which gives already the referenced examples of all 3 textbooks. Please go in through and have a look, right? Then you wanted the PRISA 7-step plan, right? And in terms of you wanted a revision of that, and then you wanted a structure for media release. Now, so in terms of what goes into the media release and what makes it perfect and what makes it well, and etc. So I want you to also bear in mind that I need to open the screen for you in order to actually show you this. I am going to be doing this in my sleep tonight, skipping from one screen to another. The screen you can see is Cole Campus. I have access to PR3 old and PR2 as well. So if you go into PR3 new, which is what you're doing, right? Now, if you look on the left-hand side under modules, that's why I say that the tabs that are not grayed out, guys, you need to go and have a look in terms of what is in there, right? Now, this first one, public relations outline, it means you didn't check it when you registered for this year, but that is the one that gives you an outline of what is going to be covered in this year and what needs to be achieved. The textbooks are in there, right? Now, here's your Harvard referencing document. There's plagiarism document, how to access YouTube videos. We've got week 1, right? Week 2. Now, your formative assessment, right? 1. The brief, the cover page, all of the slides, including the slides, are here. Now, if you look here where it says watch F1 briefing video here, Claire from the Santon campus has done a comprehensive, it's a recording on the FA1 briefing, right? And she talks you through the slides in terms of the briefing document. So please make sure to actually watch it. It will take you here and the video will play, right? Please take some time out to actually go and access that and to be able to watch that. I think it's very important because there's things you may pick up that might be quite useful, right? So that's it, guys, for this. Please remember, this is something additional that's been done. We are not going to, the campus, the team at the campus has made it clear that this is a once-off thing that we're going to do just because there was a change in the lectures and things like that. So very important is when you get your feedback, like at the end of PR2, when you got your feedback from the lecturer who marked your assignments, you should have actually just did a screenshot or wrote down word for word exactly what the feedback from the lecturer was. Because the thing is, I know that you recently tried to go and check with the team in Arcadia if you could access that feedback and it's no longer available on the system. Now, what has happened is you are not 100% sure which were the areas that were marked that you needed to improve on. So what I suggest is when you get your FA assessments back, 1, 2, and 3, and your summative, make sure you take the research part, the feedback part, and you screenshot it, or you write down step by step where you need to improve on for your own understanding. So guys, that's it from me. Yes, as I said, unfortunately, I'm unable to do the recording tomorrow or Sunday because the Saturdays I normally have classes, which I attend, and I can't miss. My situation is quite different, is where if we miss a certain number of classes, we get kicked off our program. So I'm unable to do that. And Sunday, I have an assignment that I've got to work on. So I am unable to do the recording and for you to sit in. Apologies for today. We don't know what happened with the cables and Eskom, etc. We got the electricity when it was quite late. So I'm going to be signing off now, and good luck, and I hope this has helped you in some way.